Unless you've been living under a rock for the past few years, you've probably heard more than you even wanted to hear about saddle hunting. I think for good reason, mobile hunting in general, but especially saddle hunting, has become exceedingly popular over the past few seasons, and I wanted to give my thoughts on saddle hunting. So just a little bit of background. When I first heard about saddle hunting on a podcast or a YouTube video, I thought it was probably the weirdest thing I'd ever heard of, and I didn't think that I would ever even give it a try. Honestly, the descriptions on podcasts really made it sound a lot more complicated than it actually was, and it seemed like just a lot of moving parts to do exactly what a tree stand already did. On the other hand, I did want to get a little bit more mobile with my whitetail hunting setups, and I had never really been able to be effectively mobile with tree stands that I had used in the past. I made a decision that if I was going to become a more mobile hunter, a saddle was probably my best option. So in 2019, I bought a tethered Mantis after hearing a lot of good things about it and gave it a try. So let's go through some pros and cons of saddle hunting. The first thing I was pleasantly surprised by was the comfort. I find with a saddle, you have a lot more variability of angles. You can sit, you can stand, you can lean. There's a lot of positions in between just sitting and standing for almost infinite adjustability. The second huge advantage that I saw was weight. I'm definitely not an ounce counter or someone who weighs every single thing I bring into the whitetail woods, but the huge thing with a saddle hunting system is you're not just saving a few ounces or a pound, you're saving 10, 12 pounds in some cases, depending what run and gun tree stand you're using. But way more important than weight savings for me was just the reduction in bulk or the reduction of the footprint. I put it around my waist just like I would put a safety harness on when I was using a tree stand, and I walk in with it, you literally don't even notice that it's on your waist. With a tree stand, unless you're going to use an extremely small platform, the stand is almost always going to be slightly wider than your shoulders and slightly taller than your shoulders, meaning when you're going through brush and ducking under things, you have the ability to get hung up on branches, on twigs, on brush, and that was something that really always frustrated me. It's noisy, it slows you down. I don't ever want to have to worry about something on my back getting snagged. I find that even if you're using a platform to saddle hunt from, the footprint is so much smaller that no part of the system is any wider or taller than your torso, which basically means you can get through any terrain without worrying about getting snagged or hung up on branches. Combine that with the fact that the saddle is made almost entirely of fabric. The noise reduction in going through that type of brush is also significant. This is by far the largest advantage of running a saddle system as compared to a tree stand system. I've used climbers in the past, and I've done some run and gun hunting with a hang-on tree stand, and I have to say, this is so much simpler and so much quieter to set up that there's almost no comparison. Just a quick note on that though, I know that you can be quiet and you can be efficient with any system if you have enough practice. I'm speaking more for the risk of noise if things don't go exactly the way you were hoping. And finally, I think the maneuverability around a tree, being able to use the tree in front of you as cover, is a really huge deal and something that I don't think I realized was going to be as much of an advantage as it ended up being. In a saddle, depending on the tree that you're set up in, you have a lot more flexibility to use the tree as cover as you move into position to execute a shot. Basically, you're on the opposite side of the tree from whatever game you're hunting, so it gives you the ability to hide behind the trunk of the tree and move out just enough to shoot. When a lot of people talk about the mobility and maneuverability of a saddle system, I think in people's minds they picture a lot of movement. Once you're used to it and you're confident executing these movements, they're very subtle, probably no more movement than you would use in a tree stand. It's just a different type of movement. Now, saddle hunting isn't perfect. I think there are some cons. Obviously, the startup cost for a saddle is not cheap. You're talking in the $500 range when all is said and done between your ropes, your pouches, the saddle itself, some sort of platform. It's not a cheap startup cost. But if you're someone like me who in the past had multiple tree stands and multiple sets of sticks set up throughout a property that I was going to be hunting, it's a very similar amount of money, except this one goes with you wherever you go and you're paying all that money for one kit instead of multiple. The nice thing about this though is you're not leaving anything behind in the woods to be stolen. So if you're someone who's had issues with tree stands being stolen like I have, this might actually save you some money because nobody's stealing your saddle out of the tree while you're not there. There definitely is a learning curve just on learning how to properly use the saddle. I found comfort in it pretty much right away. From what I've heard though, that's not everyone's experience. And the final potential downside of a saddle system is the dreaded weak side shot that everyone talks about. I've never actually had an animal come in on my weak side that I wasn't able to shoot because of where they came in. but if they would, there are a few ways to execute that shot. Those of you who don't know what a weak side shot is, it's basically if you are a right-handed shooter, you are most comfortable shooting to your left side. If the deer comes into your right side, unfortunately, you have to do some maneuvering to execute that shot. My preferred method is to hunt out of a smaller tree that allows me to get around the back side, and I'll move 1 foot onto the top of my highest climbing stick, and I'll simply execute the shot around the back side of the tree. Some people like to stand on their platform as if it were a tree stand and turn around this way to shoot back to their right. The most important thing is to plan your setup thoughtfully so you can avoid that shot if possible, just like you would avoid the directly behind you shot in a tree stand. So my final thoughts on saddle hunting. I'm sure not everyone would like the saddle as much as I do, but for me, it's been a huge advantage. In fact, I like the saddle so much that I've actually sold all of my tree stands. I don't own a single tree stand anymore. I just think it's a better way to do mobile run and gun hunting. My plan is to do a more in-depth review of the specific saddle hunting equipment that I'm using. So keep your eyes out for that review coming hopefully in the next few weeks, and thank you once again for watching.